So in this video, we're going to take a behind the scenes look at what goes into making planning decisions at local councils. Now, I'm obviously going to focus on Colchester for this one, but if you're in England, I would imagine the rules and regulations are going to be pretty much identical. Planning decisions is one of those things that gets the public really rather irate, but also the councillors themselves.
Why are we here? If we can't make a decision, if we can't debate it and make a decision because the decision is already made, why are we sitting here? Perhaps we ought to go and have a cup of coffee round the corner and then spend our time better. I'm sorry, but that's the inference.
There are no grounds to refuse this application. None of us can think of anything. We can't go against the highway in that. So, colleagues, we need to make a decision. This application is up for approval. I have to ask, is anyone going to propose this application for approval?
So when it comes to most things in the council, there is the hierarchy of things come down from the government as to we want you to do this. So two of the things that we'll focus on in this video is the need for renewable energy and the push for more housing. So because the government are very strongly directing and focusing the councils, they make it very difficult for them to say no. And councillors can only say no to something if it fits the parameters that they're allowed to say no. So they can't just use their common sense and good judgment and say the access road to this new development is really poor. The existing residents cannot take this number of cars and lorries coming down. This is a bad idea. They're not allowed to make that judgment if Essex Highways have told them, oh no, we're fine with it, there's no problem. Even though the councillors live locally and they can say, yeah, there is a problem there, they're told to ignore that because they're not the experts. And the same with fire hazards. With the battery storage units for these solar farms, councillors are told they cannot take that into consideration to be a reason to decline a planning application. Because it's the fire department, it's their responsibility. And also the Secretary of State has deemed that fire hazards for solar farms must be considered as a neutral in the planning decision process. So immediately these councillors are battling away with their hands tied behind their back because all of the reasons they come up with, the officers then tell them, well, that's not a credible reason for turning down this application. So you might be thinking, well, why don't they just turn it down anyway, regardless? Well, if the council turn down a planning application and an appeal is made, if the council loses that appeal, they have to pay all the costs. And also, the councillors themselves are negligent if they don't follow the rules and regulations that are set out before them. So you might also wonder, why don't these outside organisations like Essex Highways, DEFRA and Fire Department, why aren't they saying no to these things? Why are they also pushing it through? Well, here's why.
I mean, ultimately, they know that if they object, they are likely to be called into a public inquiry to justify why this land is of such significance it cannot be released.
So would you, if you were in their position, would you want a public inquiry if you go against the government? And of course, who funds these organisations? Yes, that would be the government. Okay, ultimately us, but their primary payer is the government. We have national planning rules and regulations that the whole country has to follow, but also there are local level ones as well. And within this, it's a complete minefield of rules and regulations that both planning officers have to know, but the councillors have to be experts in planning themselves, because if they don't know all the rules and regulations, they can't adequately challenge anything they don't like. But it would appear when the government want to push something through, it doesn't matter how strong an argument these councillors come up with, no matter how well they try and represent the local people, if there is a predisposition to get something through, you pretty much guarantee it's going to go through. The very first planning meeting I ever watched was a solar farm in Birch. So the councillors went to the site to do a visit to really get to know the area, and they had a 106-page document to read with all of the pros and cons and all of the reasons why the council officers felt this should be approved. Now, I've always been very pro-solar. Certainly in the 10 years I was digital nomading around the warmest parts of Europe, I relied very heavily on solar when I was in areas where I was off-gridding in southern Spain and Italy and Portugal, etc. So I've always been very pro it. It's only recently that I've actually started to research it and realised it really isn't anywhere near as good as I thought it was. And having now settled back in England, the difference between solar in the southeast of England and southern Spain, it's ridiculous putting good farmland over to solar here. It should be criminal. It really is. So the production of solar panels with all of the mining and everything that goes into it really isn't at all green. And then there's the issues of recycling, and not to mention if any of the panels get damaged and that glass cracks, all those toxic materials leach out into the soil, so it becomes hazardous waste. So they're really not as wonderful as I thought they were. But anyway, that aside, let's now give you some of the opinions of the councillors. Some were for it and some were against.
Renewable energy targets should not be at the cost of losing productive farmland. Food security is as important as energy security. Recent food shortages have shown this clearly. The solar plant is unlikely to generate anywhere near 40 megawatts of power, even at peak, with a more likely 10 to 15% only being regularly generated. There's a significant risk from fire and toxic gas release from the large battery energy storage systems, BESS. Firefighters have died in several countries. There is no certain way to put a BESS fire out. Thermal runaway, if used, allows fires to burn out, emitting highly toxic gases requiring a 5-mile radius, with 2 primary schools within a mile, homes 400 metres away, Colchester Zoo and Abberton Reservoir there.
My name is Ed Perrin and I am Head of Project Development at Low Carbon. This project is for a 40 megawatt solar farm with battery storage, which would provide enough electricity for 12,850 Colchester homes per annum, saving over 7,000 tonnes of CO2, and would have a sizable and positive contribution towards your net zero target. Importantly, this project is deemed by your planning officer to provide a positive planning balance, where the benefits of the scheme in its contribution to Colchester's climate emergency agenda outweighs the temporary loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. Councillors, the scale of the climate emergency and energy crisis has never been greater, and all councils must now act with urgency. You have before you today a proposal which will help Colchester move towards net zero with a strong officer recommendation for approval.
This development does nothing to contribute towards the council's 2030 net zero climate targets. It's owned and run by a private investment company, not Colchester City Council. The electricity generated is going into the national grid, not a Colchester local network. We are told for around 12,000 homes, whilst I think the CPRE has pointed out a single offshore wind turbine can power 16,000 homes. I ask you to preserve our much valued open landscape, retain farmland for food production, and refuse this application.
So you have got to give thought to the runoff of water around the area. If there's any contamination, that all feeds into the reservoir at Leia, which obviously we're all drinking.
I went on a site visit today and I didn't really see any outstanding vistas. I didn't see mountains. I didn't see medieval castles. It was just farmland. And primarily farmland has always been an industry. It has always been served a functional purpose for growing food and making money for the farmer. And also, you know, we're not all romantics. Not everyone thinks farms are beautiful. Some people think solar farms are beautiful, which aren't impacting, you know, the natural beauty there, which really in this part of the country, it's the great big skies, but you can see those great big skies in the Sainsbury's car park and Tollgate. So, you know, solar farms don't go that high. So really, I don't see any reason why anyone's objecting. And the farmer has to make money in the post-Brexit economy. Who are they going to sell to when we've lost access to the largest single market?
They should be able to sell to the captive and probably rather hungry population of the UK, because as part of the Absolute Zero scheme, the plans are to close all the airports, to cease flying, to stop shipping, to stop food imports, and to cease the production of beef and lamb in the UK. So I don't think they'll have any problems with customers, unless people develop a taste for stir-fried solar panels, of course. But currently, the UK is only able to produce 54% of the food required, and that was from figures in 2020. So with the amount of solar farms that are being passed left, right and centre, and farmland that's being rewilded, we could end up only being able to produce 40% of our food supply.
I'm going to propose we put this to a vote, and I'm going to be voting for it.
There are so many more thousands of acres in the cultural district that actually would be more suitable and lower quality land. Agricultural land should take precedence in this case.
No, DEFRA and Natural England have not objected to this scheme because they do not consider it to be the permanent loss of land, because it's a temporary permission, and that's the basis on which they have assessed it.
I don't think this application is anywhere near as simplistic as Councillor Sam McLean seems to suggest. But having said that, it is a delicate balance between protecting rural communities and also recognising that we do have a climate emergency. Now, as a council, we've signed up for that climate emergency, and we've guaranteed almost to be carbon net zero by 2030. So we have got to do something. And on the face of it, a solar farm with the potential to generate enough energy to power 12,850 homes does look promising, and looks as if that could help us meet our targets.
Yes, it can power 12,000 homes if they are connected to gas and therefore only using about 20% electricity. When they plan to strip out all gas boilers and we go to 100%, that solar farm will not be able to power 12,000 homes 100%.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too long lamenting the lack of mountains in Hardy's Green. So I've also got concerns around the sales pitch of the sizable contribution to net zero, which was sold to us as a benefit on our climate emergency, not Britain's, at the councils. It's since been clarified it has nothing to do with that. So I think that needs taken into consideration, that really should just be wiped as a statement because it's not relevant. My biggest concern is we're being asked to approve an awful lot, not pinned down, the battery storage, things like that. Issue raised about water contamination. I accept that we're saying, can you make sure you cover this? But I personally feel that we don't know enough about it to go with it at the current time.
So the planning officers help and guide the councillors through this process and tell them what they can and can't do. It's a little bit like watching boa constrictor at work, where every time the councillor thinks they've come up with something that definitely is a very good reason for them not to put that application through, the council officers come along and just start gripping tighter and tighter. No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
The recommendation in the report weighs up the planning benefits of the scheme against the harm that's been identified. And the report is clear that the public benefits do outweigh that harm significantly in the opinion of your officers. But the advice to you is clear. If you were to decide an alternative outcome to this application and that which is recommended, it is imperative that you identify reasons for refusal that can be sustained at appeal. At the moment, as the chair has just indicated, we have yet to identify what sound reasons for refusal there could be.
Everything is against us in this because nobody's objected to the application where we are. We have no power to reject this application. It does worry me about the fire and the batteries, but we have the condition put in place that there will be a final inspection by the fire service in that, and it could be rejected. And now we move on to the main bit. It is down for approval. Could I ask all those members who approve this application with the conditions attached, as mentioned, please vote. Show your hands now in favour.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7, Chair.
And those against this application?
That's 3. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
So the clip at the beginning that I showed when none of the councillors wanted to vote for that housing application to go through because they all could see the problems with the access.
So I want to know what realistically tonight our options are with this application, please. Thank you.
It's been through the full examination process and the issue of the access was undoubtedly considered by the inspector. You have a statutory duty under section 36 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act to determine applications in accordance with the development plan. I suggest that it would be extremely unwise to do anything other than to take his good advice and the recommendation of the planning officer.
I have to ask, is anyone going to propose this application for approval?
What happened? Did they hold out?
We could be all right. Councillor Warnes, are you proposing?
Yes, I will propose it. It is reluctantly, but I understand the advice that Simon has given us. And therefore, yeah, I will propose approval.
Have we got a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Hogg is seconded. So we will now move to the vote to approve this application as set before us tonight. All those in favour, please show your hands.
5.
All those against?
Anyone else got the courage of their convictions? No. No, just the one then.
All those abstaining.
4.
Nothing shows one's displeasure in the system quite like abstaining. And this is part of the problem when you've got political parties. I don't know whether that councillor reluctantly put his hand up because he thought, oh, we're going to have to pass this, someone's got to do it, or whether it was because it was a colleague of his chairing the meeting. And then did it get seconded for the same reasons? If that had been completely independent, i.e. a housing residents association, more like a council of elders and not political parties, would everyone have held out and said, no, we're not putting this through? We're just not. So I hope this video has given you a better idea of the challenges that these councillors face, because I see so many really quite nasty comments about planning decisions, but I hope you can see it's not easy for them either. So the more of us that can get into our local councils and take a stand, and the more of us that make independent parties, the more we can start to challenge this type of thing. Because if no one had buckled and had voted that through, it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened. Just takes enough people saying no. If we all keep complying, we just get more of what we've already got. So future videos will probably more likely be a roundup of what's happened this week at the council, but I'll also be doing a deep dive at some point in the council finances, but that's quite a headache of a video to do because it's quite complicated. So at some point that will come, and I will compare Colchester to other local councils as well, so you can get an idea of how we're doing in comparison to other councils. But also, I do hope that these videos encourage you to come and visit Colchester, those of you that are outside the area. And as you now know, we do have stunning views at the local Sainsbury's car park. So if that doesn't entice you over, I don't know what will.